At a family estate opening, my brother boomed. She'll make a fine supporter someday behind the real leaders. Everyone roared with laughter as I smiled. Over 32 years, I seized every political, financial, and legal lever. When the final audit hit, 5 generations' holdings were seized for debts they didn't even realize I had orchestrated. Their surname is now banned from major universities' alumni registries, and a wing of the National Museum bears only my name, a permanent reminder of who truly won. I was 26 the day my brother humiliated me in front of the entire family. It was a warm June afternoon in Rye, New York, and we were all gathered in the old family estate after my uncle passed. The place smelled like money and dust. The walls were covered in oil paintings of men who looked like they hadn't smiled since the 1800s. Everyone was their aunts, cousins, in-laws, all dressed like they were about to shoot a Ralph Lauren ad. My brother Brian came in like he owned the place. Tan face, perfect hair, cufflinks flashing under the light. He always had that loud fake laugh that made people think he was important. My mom called him the future of the family. I was the hard-working one. That meant the one who got ignored. As the lawyer started reading the documents, Brian stood up, raised his glass, and said, "Let's toast my baby sister Ruth. She'll make a fine supporter someday behind the real leaders." They all laughed. Not a chuckle. A full-blown laugh. The kind that echoes off the walls. Even my mom laughed. I forced a smile. But something in me snapped. Not loudly. Quietly. A small crack that turned cold fast. In that moment, I decided I wasn't going to support them. I was going to destroy them. They always thought I was the nice one. Quiet. Obedient. Always bringing coffee to meetings. Always sitting in the back. I let them believe it. It gave me time. After law school, I could have joined the family business, but I didn't. I took a job downtown at a real estate firm. Entry level. 12-hour days. I kept my head down and watched. Learned how money really moved. Who signed what. Where contracts got buried. Where loopholes lived. At night, I studied tax code and corporate law. Not the sexy stuff, the boring, footnote-type garbage no one reads. That's where the power is. Step 1. Ownership without them knowing. By my early 30s, I was forming companies under borrowed names. A client owed me a favor, a retired CPA who used to work for banks in the Caymans. He helped me set up a structure that traced through 4 countries. One of my first targets was a small holding company. My family barely paid attention to it. Owned a rundown commercial block in Tulsa. I bought it using one of my dummy corporations, then leased it back to the family at a rate above market. They didn't notice. They were too busy arguing over vacation homes. That gave me leverage. That gave me a foothold. When the cousins graduated Columbia, Princeton, wherever they came looking for jobs, I hired them through one of my firms. Let them think I was finally part of the team. I trained them. Let them sign documents they didn't read. Moved assets into joint ventures they didn't understand. One of them, my cousin Naomi, actually thanked me for giving her a seat at the table. She signed over a portfolio of commercial real estate to a management company I owned through a shell. I smiled. Roy had been the family accountant for over 40 years. He was old, kind, and tired. He didn't notice when the firm he worked for got bought out. That firm was purchased by a private group I controlled. Within months, Roy retired. The new guy, Anthony, played ball. He started shifting liabilities between trusts. On paper, it looked like nothing changed. In reality, debts were being transferred into the names of individual family members. By then, the portfolio was over-leveraged and poorly managed. But because I helped clean things up, they thanked me. They didn't realize I was loading the entire house with explosives. The final trigger was a bond default. One of my offshore companies, technically owned by my cousin's daughter via a proxy trust, missed a payment on an international bond. That wasn't an accident. It forced a forensic audit. Everything came out. Hidden debts. Questionable transfers. Asset mismanagement. Conflict of interest. None of it tied directly to me. The family trust froze. Properties were seized. Bank accounts locked. I watched it all from my condo in D.C. sipping tea. Brian called me 17 times that week. I didn't pick up. 2 years before the collapse, I made a $48 million donation to the National Museum of American Progress. Through yet another proxy. They named a wing after me. The Ruth C. Penmark Pavilion for Public Governance. On opening day, I stood under the archway and smiled at the cameras. My brother's last name, the family name, had been quietly removed from the museum donor walls after the scandal. I made sure of it. The Ivy Leagues followed. Even their alumni magazines stopped returning their emails. Legacy gone. Their name means nothing now. Mine means permanence. Brian finally got through to me. Called from some small condo in Orlando. Said he was broke. Said he didn't understand. Why? He asked. Why would you do this to your own blood? I told him. You wanted me behind the leaders. I stood behind every decision you made. I just made sure the floor collapsed under your feet. After Brian called me from that Orlando condo, I expected silence. I thought the final blow had landed. I figured they'd all scatter like dust, ashamed and broken. But they didn't disappear. They regrouped. A few weeks after the call, I got a letter from a law firm in Boston. Class action style. Thick packet.
Fancy impossible.
I flipped through the pages. It was from my own blood. My cousins, their kids, even a few in-laws I hadn't thought about in decades. They were suing me. They claimed fraudulent misrepresentation, predatory structuring, and familial sabotage. I laughed when I read that last one. They had no real evidence. They were going off emotion, off what they thought they felt. But they couldn't find paper trails because I had buried every move 10 layers deep. No direct links. Just whispers and assumptions. Still, they got the attention of one senator from Connecticut, a guy who used to play tennis with Brian. He made a little noise in a finance committee, asking questions about my museum donation and my offshore accounts. It annoyed me, but it didn't scare me. That's when Naomi broke. My cousin Naomi, the one who had signed over half of the family's real estate into my dummy corp, she came forward. Tearful. Said she'd been pressured by me. Claimed she didn't understand what she signed. She had everything to lose. Her kids were in prep schools. Her husband was trying to run for city council. She needed someone to blame. So she pointed the finger at me. She even gave them emails, not full threads, just parts. Just enough to make it look like I was manipulating her. I expected that. What I didn't expect was Brian showing up on a podcast. It was some trashy finance show, two guys in hoodies ranting about the death of old money. Brian went on and told the world his sister had weaponized capitalism and waged a silent war against her own family for decades. He called me calculating and soulless. He said I needed therapy. He said I set the family name on fire just to see it burn. That episode got 2.3 million views in a week. The headlines followed. Heiress turned predator? And the ruthless rise of Ruth Penmark. Even the museum board started sweating. They called me in for a private meeting. Said they were re-evaluating the optics of the pavilion. That's when I realized they were trying to erase me now. So I did what I do best. I found their weak points. I traced Naomi's husband's city council campaign to an illegal donation through a crypto pack. I didn't expose it, I let them know I could. The podcast guys. One of them owed $88,000 in back taxes and didn't know I had friends at the collection bureau. I made a few calls. Their next episode was all about how media got the Ruth Penmark story wrong. The museum? I offered them double. From a new foundation. And just like that, their concerns disappeared. Brian went quiet for a month. Then last week I got a letter from his lawyer. He was claiming I had stolen an antique family heirloom, a Civil War sword supposedly passed down from our great-great-grandfather. It was laughable. But this wasn't about the sword. It was about noise. He wanted headlines. He wanted attention. What he didn't know was that I had the sword. Not stolen, purchased. Legally, from an auction house in New Jersey. Turns out, it had been sold off in the 90s during one of our uncle's bad debt clearances. I tracked it down years ago, restored it, and kept it in a glass case in my library. I mailed Brian a copy of the receipt, the ownership certificate, and a short note. Leaders know how to keep what's theirs. No response. I've won every battle. On paper, I've erased them. Publicly, my name is stronger than theirs ever was. But lately things feel unfinished. A few family names from the lawsuit have gone dark. No social media, no movement, no leaks. And then yesterday my assistant forwarded me an email.
Anonymous sender.
Subject line. You think it's over? There was no message. Just an attachment. A photo. It was me stepping into a courthouse last year. From across the street. Long lens. Not press. Personal. Someone's still watching. And whoever's left there not finished. I stared at that photo for a long time. It wasn't a press shot. It was angled from behind a tree, blurred around the edges, like it was taken in secret. I was wearing the gray suit I only wore to legal briefings. The timestamp matched a meeting I had last year with the state audit board, the one no one was supposed to know about. Someone had been close. Closer than I realized. I had thought I'd closed every door, locked every gate. But this meant someone was still inside. First, I checked my assistant's email. Clean. Then the firm servers. Clean. No breach. I called in a guy I used back in the PAC days, used to work digital ops in Langley before he got pushed out for ethics violations. He owed me. Still does. He ran the metadata on the photo. The GPS data had been wiped, but the camera model was traced a mid-level Nikon. Registered in Stamford, Connecticut. Registered to a woman named Dina March. That name hit hard. Dina was my brother Brian's ex-wife. They divorced 15 years ago in what the family called a quiet arrangement. What they didn't know was that Dina took the fall for a failed property investment Brian made under her name. He left her with the tax burden and custody of their daughter Callie. The family blacklisted Dina afterward. She disappeared. Now she was back. I started digging. Dina had resurfaced in upstate New York. Changed her last name. She ran a nonprofit now, one of those quiet community development places that looks boring from the outside, but always has government money funneling through it. One of the board members? Naomi. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't scattered. They were regrouping. This wasn't about revenge anymore. They were organizing. 3 days later, I got a call from an old contact at a university press. They told me there was a biography being pitched about my family. Not just a history but an exposé. The title? The Supporter Who Stole the Throne. The Ruth Penmark Legacy, no author listed. Just anonymous insider. It was bait. Meant to get under my skin. It worked. But it also confirmed something important. They weren't trying to destroy me in court. They were going for something bigger. They wanted the story. They wanted the public to choose sides. This time it wasn't of me. It was of my father. In 1976. Standing in front of a burned-down apartment building in Harlem. I recognized the building. I recognized the look on his face. I remembered the way he refused to talk about what happened that year, how the family suddenly came into a strange amount of money. Attached was a note. You didn't build the foundation. You just exploited it. Whoever sent it wasn't just after me. They were digging into the past, deep into the original secrets this family buried. I started rechecking everything. And that's when I saw it. 2 of the nonprofits that Dina and Naomi were connected to had merged with a private equity fund based in Vermont. A fund registered under a trust. The trust was owned by a woman named C.J. March. Callie, Dina's daughter. Brian's daughter. The one he never claimed publicly after the divorce. The one he cut out of every document. She'd be 28 now. And smart. Real smart. Smart enough to sit back and watch me tear down the house, so she could rebuild it in her name. She wasn't just organizing the leftovers. She was reassembling the parts once scattered, using the people I heard as soldiers, turning old grudges into strategy. I underestimated her. She's not just coming after me. She's trying to flip the whole story to make me the villain, her the rightful heir. It's not about money anymore. It's about narrative, reputation, legacy. She's coming for the one thing I care about now, my name. I've destroyed people for less. But this time it's personal. She thinks I don't know what she's planning. She thinks I'm done fighting. She's wrong. Callie thought she had me. She was rebuilding my entire downfall into a story, her story. She wasn't just coming for my name. She was trying to take everything I built. She had Dina feeding her old secrets. Naomi giving her contacts. Brian giving her the dirty family history, anything that would make me look like a monster. But they forgot who I am. I don't break. I break others. I started with Dina. She'd been running her nonprofit in upstate New York using federal grant money. I had my guy look deeper. Turns out, she'd been double-dipping funds, logging work hours on 2 grants for the same day, 2 counties apart. Illegal. Felony level. I didn't go to the feds. I leaked it. An anonymous tip to a small local news blog. From there, it caught fire. By week's end, state investigators froze her nonprofit's assets. Her board resigned. Donations stopped. Her name was dragged through every small-town paper from Albany to Buffalo. Dina tried to go quiet. I didn't let her. I made sure people saw her as what she always was: sloppy, emotional, careless. Naomi had helped Callie get financial backers through her charity contacts. So I looked at her books next. She'd set up a consulting firm that didn't file a single 1099 for 3 years. Worse, she had paid her own daughter $70,000 from a donor account listed for cancer research. I didn't even have to leak this one. I handed it straight to the state attorney's office. Naomi's house was raided in the middle of the night. Her husband filed for separation within a week. Her daughter dropped out of college after the news hit campus. And just like before Naomi folded, she sent me a message through my assistant. "I'm done. I'll tell you anything." I didn't reply. Brian was the face, the mouthpiece. He went on podcasts. He went on talk shows. He tried to play the victim. I let him, because I had something better. Years ago, I made Brian sign a power of attorney over a dormant family trust, just in case of emergency transactions. He never read the fine print. He forgot all about it. I didn't. That trust quietly held stock in a foreign medical supply company, the same one being investigated for price gouging during a pandemic year. Brian's name was still tied to the shares. I sent the files to the right journalist with the right timing. The headline dropped on a Sunday. Family power broker linked to global price scandal. Brian was ruined. His name trended for the wrong reasons. His podcast invites disappeared. His former allies ghosted him. The final blow? I bought his condo's debt, then foreclosed on it. He now rents the guest house of an ex-fraternity brother in Sarasota, mowing lawns for cash. Callie was smart. She kept her hands clean. No shady emails. No paper trail. Her trust fund was shielded by nonprofit shells and education initiatives. And she never used my name publicly. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how well I knew her father. She didn't know about the child support deal Brian buried. The one that gave up his rights to her in exchange for a one-time tax shelter through a Panama account. I had it. Signed. Dated. Witnessed. I leaked it anonymously, not to the press. To her.
No cameras. No headlines.
Just a single email from a throwaway address. He never wanted you. I bought his silence with a condo in Boca. That was it. 2 days later, Callie shut down her nonprofit. Deleted every social media account. Her funders pulled out. She withdrew the book proposal. I never heard her name again. With them gone, I tied up loose ends. I filed for a complete rebrand of my family's last name through the Museum Foundation, their legacy completely erased from every record that mattered. I even paid to remove their grandfather's name from a stained glass window at his old seminary. I replaced it with, "In honor of R.C. Penmark for those who build alone." After it was all over, I sat in my office one night and read the old audit reports. The damage I caused. The good people I crushed on my way up. Some cousins weren't evil, just weak. Some didn't deserve what I did. But I did it anyway. For 32 years I lived for revenge. And I got it. Every inch. But the cost? No family. No real friends. Just walls, money, and a name etched into stone. Because when I walk into the National Museum's West Wing, I see kids on field trips pointing at the plaque that bears my name. They ask, "Who was Ruth Penmark?" And the guide says, "She rewrote her family's history. Alone." They don't talk about Brian. Or Naomi. Or Callie. They only say my name. And that's exactly what I wanted.